back to the table with the doctor, Jason Heller. What's going on?
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Good, man. Good. It's been a little bit. Excited to have you back.
It has. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Interesting times here politically, and obviously has some effect on the market and the economy. And I think that's going to lead us perfectly into our conversation today.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about political bias. So political bias is people's tendency to allow their political leanings to affect their decisions financially.
Or their whole lives right now.
Lives,
obviously, the country is pretty well divided and people are very stuck in their side that they believe. And so no surprise that this is going to start to fall into their investment decisions.
For sure.
Even as we see companies actually start to grow with the idea that they're going to lean towards taking market share inside someone's political beliefs to be able to drive their business. Which you see like the Truth Social and things like that.
For sure.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about all that. But before we go any further, we're going to try to stay apolitical. We're not going to talk about our political beliefs. What's the old saying? The views expressed by the co-hosts are not necessarily those of the podcast. So we're going to try to stay as apolitical as possible. That being said, who are you going to vote for? I'm totally joking.
Yeah, we're not going there.
No.
Well, we don't even know who's going to be running.
Very true. At this point, we don't. So we're about 3 months away from the election. And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get clients coming in saying, if so-and-so wins, I want to pull everything out. And I could have a meeting at 10 o'clock with a left-leaning client who says, if Trump wins, I want to go to cash. I could have a meeting at 11 o'clock with a right-leaning client who says, if the Democrat wins, I want to pull everything and go to cash. And so the ideology of we're going to allow whoever wins the presidency to determine how we make our investment decisions, history shows that's a terrible, terrible, terrible way to view things. But again, this is one of the major biases, and it peaks up every couple of years when you have elections, especially presidential elections. And we want to kind of dispel some of the
I feel like it's gotten worse, too, over the last few cycles. You know, from when I started in the early 2000s, it wasn't as much of a topic as it is 20 plus years later. Now people are really using their political biases to be able to start to make investment decisions.
I think a big part of that, and again, we don't want to dive too much into it, I think a big part of that is you see fewer and fewer bipartisan agreements than you did 20 some odd years ago.
Yep.
Right? 20 some odd years ago, it wasn't uncommon to have bills and laws passed across aisle.
Yep.
Now it's really difficult.
So let's talk a little bit about what actual political bias is.
Sure. So, I mean, again, it's the belief that your political leanings should dictate your investment decisions.
So how do you go about trying to separate out the fact that I believe politically that if this party wins, it is going to ruin our country? And then how do you psychologically go, well, yes, I still want to invest in this country then?
Yep. So the first thing I always tell everybody is separate your non-fiscal policy issues from the fiscal policy issues, right? We're not talking about women's rights. We're not talking about LGBTQ rights right now. We're just talking about money, okay? Take all that off the table and let's just focus on the economy. Focus on the stock market, okay? And what did you just say? He said, I believe if this happens, it could ruin the country. Okay, what do we always say? As soon as you start saying, I believe, you're already down the rabbit hole, right? You're now substituting feelings for data. And that's where people make irrational decisions. So I want to talk a little bit about historical data and kind of dispel the idea that any one party running the country can spell doom or it can spell super success in the market.
Well, let's talk about it.
Okay. So historically, it does not matter if a Republican or a Democrat is running the government. There's varying degrees of success in the market, but it's been successful, right? So go back to 1923. 1926. Excuse me, 1926.
So almost 100 years ago.
Right. If we look at that period of time, you're looking at almost every single presidential run has produced a positive return in the market. Okay? Some have been much more positive than others, but you're looking, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. In fact, if you look at the times in which it was unified government, so unified government being Republican president, Republican Senate, Republican House, or Democratic president, Democratic Senate, Democratic House. Historically, those times have produced an almost identical rate of return. Doesn't matter who's running the show, almost identical. So the Republicans during the last 100 years, about 14.5% per year when that's happened. The Democrats, about a little over 14%. So almost identical. Doesn't matter. Really positive. If we're gonna argue over 50 basis points, then we got another thing coming.
Well, the market tends to like clarity, and when you have everybody lined up in the House, the Senate, and sitting in the Oval Office, you can determine relatively clearly what policies are going to come through. Therefore, the economy can make investment-based, or the market can start to make some decisions.
Sure.
It's the ambiguity that makes people worry more than anything, and it makes the markets fickle a lot of times.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And again, I want to reiterate, throw out foreign policy, throw out domestic issues. We're literally just talking about return in the market at this stage, right? Where you start to see divergence is when you get a split government. Okay, so Republican president, split Congress. Okay, now Wall Street will tell you that's kind of what they want. They want gridlock. Wall Street will tell you, by and large, they believe that government, Washington's a bunch of morons, and they don't want them making decisions. They want capitalism to just to run itself. When you get a Democratic president and a split Congress, that's historically when you get the best return in the market. So north of 16.5% per year on average. Republican president and split Congress, still positive, but far less, about 7.5% a year. Okay. Now, again, these are historical averages. Averages are always meant to be broken. But what's the main theme you're hearing here? It's positive. So we don't have to worry about that.
And you see changes happening, right? You see Wall Street now not backing the Republican Party as much as they backed it in the past previously. So even that historical part might be flip-flopped as you see Wall Street now moving parties and supporting one other one as parties start to change where their policies are going and what their philosophy is behind running the government.
Right. So the big thing I want people to grasp is as this heats up, and it's going to you're going to see it all on TV. Harris is raising a ton of money. Trump has raised a ton of money. That's all going to go into TV ads and rallies and this and that. So it's going to really be in your face. We're about 3 months out. It's going to get way more publicity than it has. And it's gotten a lot already.
And the rhetoric increases as if the party you oppose gets into power, here's how the country is going to completely go down. And you're going to hear that over and over and over again, that fear-mongering. So then you're worried about how does this affect my money and what am I going to do?
Right. And especially as this ramps up, we'll talk in a second about the pattern that you see in presidential election years because it's really concerted. It's pretty dynamic. The issue, especially now in the next 12, 13, 14 weeks leading up to the election, is to not buy into the media overhype. Remember, whether it's unified Republican, unified Democrat, split with a Republican leader, split with a Democratic leader, it still has been positive throughout. So you shouldn't be concerned. The idea of if Trump wins, I'm pulling all my money out of the market. Horrible. By the way, how did that work out for the person when he won in 2016? If you pulled all your money when he won an election day of 2016, you missed out on like a 70% run up in the market during his tenure. For those who pulled when Biden beat him 4 years ago, you missed out on an almost identical 70% run up in the market during that 4-year period of time, and President Biden's first term is not yet over. So the idea that one person at the top of the ticket can control where the market goes is a complete myth and a fallacy.
So the part goes back to what we always say about biases, which is grounding yourself in the facts to be able to do that. That being said, is there any concern that the market is sharing that is valid? Is there anything, as you're hearing, if one party ends up winning, that we should be concerned for our long-term investments?
So there's different there's certainly different policies from both parties, right? There's different spending policies. There's different international policies. All of that will have an effect on the overall economy itself. That I don't want people to focus on. I want people to focus on the fact that historically, it hasn't mattered. Historically, the market does continue to churn forward. To that end, I'm going to ask you a question. So during Trump's 4 years, when he was president from 16 to 20, knowing his policies, what do you think performed better, clean energy or fossil fuel stocks?
Well, my gut would say fossil fuel stocks, but the fact that you're asking me this question probably tells me I'm wrong.
So, smart. Yeah, terribly. Huge divergence. In fact, fossil fuel stocks actually lost money during his 4 years. Now remember, the market itself was up 70% during his period of time. Clean energy went through the roof. So now, knowing Biden's policies, what do you think outperformed, fossil fuels or clean energy?
Well, again, I would assume clean energy for some of the laws that are enacted during that and getting back into the Paris Accord and that.
Absolutely incorrect. So clean energy has been flat and fossil fuel went through the roof. So again, the common sense, the things that you would think. So right now Trump is running around saying he's going to make the U.S. the cryptocurrency capital of the world.
Yeah, okay, just at that Bitcoin conference.
Right. Well, think about where he was when he talked. Right. So I wouldn't buy into a lot of this stuff where, hey, if so-and-so wins, we're going to push hard in this sector or this and that. Just the overall market will continue to churn forward. It's going to have its good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, good months, bad months, of course. But historically, whoever is named president, it does not have a dramatic effect on the overall market. And that's something that everybody has to keep an eye on.
Well, I'd be curious to see how many promises, percentage-wise, made on the campaign trail, no matter which side, actually are able to be enacted when the administration gets in. And to be honest, it's probably a low percentage of it, just because that's the way that the governing politics are, and that's how we've set ourselves up, that somebody just can't go in and make overarching changes without a set of checks and balances. And so what you're hearing on TV during this election cycle, what you're seeing them either pandering to the base or trying to bring on new voters, does not mean it's going to come to fruition and completely screw up the economy, screw up the markets, or hold true to what your biggest fears are.
Right. And especially if you get divided government. If you get divided government, it's really hard to push one party's policies through. One last thing that I want to point out, because people tend to get anxious when they see the market be volatile. Presidential election years have a really strong pattern. Strong first quarter. We had a very strong first quarter. Mediocre second quarter. We were on our way toward a mediocre second quarter until the AI boom kind of hit, and we had a very strong second quarter. Horrible third quarter. And that times up with the rhetoric heating up, that times up with all the slam ads that go out there, and people start to get concerned. And then almost like a relief, as soon as the election's over, you have a solid fourth quarter. So if there's volatility in third quarter, and we've already had kind of a tough July, if there's volatility in the third quarter, know that it's normal, know that it's happened historically, and things tend to point toward the market clearing up and resuming a positive movement after the election's done. To your point, the market doesn't like uncertainty. Once the election's done, there's no more uncertainty.
And so that uncertainty ends up breeding confidence for investors and the marketplace, and it'll allow you to make some good decisions once that happens, no matter where the election goes. And the key part, it goes back to what we always talk about, is you are investing for the long term. You're not investing for the latest cycle in the news. And so what you have to always do is to watch that little voice in your head that's telling you things that are based on bias, that are trying to convince you what your long-term investment strategy is doing wrong. And I think you said it great earlier, that if you say, I believe, or if this happens, this is what I think's going to do. As soon as you start saying the ifs, the thinks, the beliefs, that's where you have to pause and just say, okay, what are the facts behind it versus my opinions? What are the emotions that are driving my feeling about this, opposed to the facts that are drawing my feeling about that? And that process of just being self-aware, that process of slowing down your thinking before you make your rational decisions is what leads to good, healthy, long-term returns.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you sitting at the table, Doctor.
Good times.
Subscribe on your favorite streaming platform if you haven't already, and don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family.